Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first breakout session. The topic is Add a Dash of Neuro-Spice to the Recipe to Success by Chelsea Zimmerman. The CDC reports that doctors diagnose around 13% of boys with ADHD, whereas only 6% of girls receive the same diagnosis, as signs and symptoms are often missed. Today, research supports have connected ADHD and entrepreneurial intention, giving hope to those that identify as neurodiverse. Traits once viewed as negative can be turned into positive ones in order to run a successful business when you are not neurotypical. In this session, you will learn the research, the traits, and most importantly, the strategies to lead to successfully running a business with ADHD. Please welcome Chelsea Zimmerman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. We had a little bit of tech issue, so we're just going to try our best. You can press start, though. I think, first and foremost, any learning development professional will know that we have to start with objectives. We're adults. We need to know why we're here and what we're going to learn. So first, we're going to look at understanding the reasons and traits of ADHD. We'll look at identifying how Neuro-Spice can lead to success. Implement key strategies to keep you on the path for success. And then I think number 4 is what this whole forum is about, right? It's taking that knowledge and then being able to advocate for others and advocate for yourself. So although I won't go over step by step of how to advocate, I think that when you learn the information, you're going to identify coworkers or partners in your life or family members that you can then better support or better support yourself. Next slide. All right, so you're already ready. You're going to touch the photos. You got it. So who am I? I think it's really important when talking about DE&I to talk about why it's important to the individual presenter. So I am a speech-language pathologist by trade. I went to Marywood University. Click the next one. I'm also a graduate of University of Nebraska Medical Center. I graduated in 2022. Yeah, last year. And I graduated with a master's of health profession teaching and technology. So I found I really love talking to people and I really love teaching people. And I'm also very tech heavy. So I wanted to put all those things together to become a better presenter, to become a better educator, and also to advocate for allied health professions. Click that picture again. I work full-time for a company called Lingraphica. We provide communication devices for patients that have had strokes, brain injuries, neurodegenerative diseases like primary progressive aphasia, like Bruce Willis. We also support those who have autism or maybe mute. So that is what I do full-time, and I work in product management with the software, and I am the senior product trainer. So again, I teach people all day. This is what I do all day. Click a picture again. I also own a company here in Wilkes-Barre area. It's called Lingua, Speech, Swallow, and Voice Services. Lingua means tongue in Italian. I am the daughter of an Italian immigrant, and it was my homage to my family. I moved to the Wilkes-Barre area in 2020 because I was not saved from COVID, and a major life change took me from Nebraska back here to Pennsylvania. And I couldn't find work that I wanted to do, so I made my own work. So I started Lingua before I started working for Lingraphica. And if I could do this all over, I'd probably pick totally separate names because everyone gets really confused at what I do and which company I'm working for. We're located on Wyoming Ave in Wyoming, but we are looking for additional space. So if anybody has any commercial real estate space, I know that in NEPA it's all about who you know, so let me know. Go ahead and click the picture again. More importantly, I am a sister and I have a wonderful little niece. My sister Gia gave me my niece Haley. I am a dog mom of a very neuro-spicy dog who has a lot of issues from poor humans, and I'm also a strength athlete. I compete in strongman and powerlifting, and that outlet comes in handy when it comes to the key of success. One more picture. And finally, I'm a friend, and this is my longest lasting relationship. These two girls are my best friends. They've been my best friends for the last 25 years. And every time when I'm in the stands at these presentations, it's usually about partners and children. But there's a whole life before partners and children. And these people made that life for me. And I would not be here if it wasn't for them. Next page. So obviously I have ADHD. I wanted to talk about the ingredients to my diagnosis, how I got diagnosed. I got diagnosed when I was 30 years old. I'm going to be 32. So it is a new diagnosis. And what pushed me to get my diagnosis and get some help was 4.5 cups of a lifelong struggle. I was the person who was like laminating my sheets so I could study while taking a shower because I had class and then practice and then a job, right? I was the person who had to write 800 note cards instead of just the notes that I took in class because my brain was not typical. I have a lifelong struggle of being the one who says what they're thinking. Well, I don't have a choice. It's impulse. And I'm not just the youngest daughter or the most charismatic daughter. I have lifelong struggles with boundaries and communication. Another ingredient to my diagnosis was a huge life change. So 1 cup life change. I was going through a major breakup, a move from the Wilkes-Barre area to, I moved down to Bucks County. Called off my wedding 3 weeks before. Major life change. And I found myself like very excited about what was to come, but obviously a little bit depressed. It would be totally not normal to go through all of those changes and not be a little depressed. Putting all of these things together, I just found that I needed some more help. It was my last semester of my second master's degree at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and I knew I couldn't go another semester and be successful, and I needed the resources and tools to do so. Go ahead and tap that little info button at the bottom. Yeah, I'm not in the minority here. I'm in the majority. Women do not get diagnosed with ADHD as much as men do, and that starts in girlhood and boyhood. So that is changing though, and I like to focus on the positive. So I'm not going to talk about all the people that got misdiagnosed like myself or undiagnosed like myself, but there is a big boom. In 2015, a study released 2003 to 2011 that there was an increase in ADHD diagnosis for girls. And that leaves me so hopeful that a girl that is 8 and 9 right now doesn't have to go through what I went through. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is really a gender equality issue, and I couldn't come here to a DE&I forum and not talk about this, right? So first, research. Go ahead and click that info. Teachers, parents, professionals, those who are diagnosing ADHD are missing it because the research is on white boys. All of the research is on white boys, so any type of minority, females, you're gonna have a harder time getting diagnosed because the adults who are responsible for the diagnosing are not going to be able to see those telltale signs. And because of this, the girls end up misdiagnosed and often treated with anti-anxiety or anti-depression instead of some tool that could help them for their ADHD. And it also has to do with diagnoses. So women don't get their diagnoses until adulthood because of stereotypical comments like, okay, Timmy has ADHD and we know it, he's 7, he's acting out and he's ripping across the classroom, but Sarah is staring out into space. She might be shy or ditzy or dim or whatever anybody wants to put, what label they want to put on them, that ends up happening first, and that causes this gender equality issue. All right, we're going to dive into understanding ADHD. So go ahead and hit the next slide there. I'm sure you all know that ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. It also used to be known as ADD. Now it's pretty much ADHD. Attention, biggest one. Difficulty listening, difficulty staying on tasks because of another stimuli. So there's white noise from this microphone. And if I was going to sit here all day and listen to these presentations, I would have a hard time because of the white noise. It also affects executive function. So these are cognitive skills that are needed for goal-directed behavioral problem solving and decision making. So you're talking about working memory, problem solving, organization of tasks, hierarchy, risk versus reward. Any of these cognitive functions land in that realm. And then another issue with ADHD is the impulsiveness. So acting before thinking things through and having a difficulty controlling their impulses. Again, we were joking about live streaming this because I was like, oh, I'm going to have to tell my parents I have ADHD because I am the youngest daughter. I'm the most outgoing grandchild. I'm the super extrovert cousin. That's not me. I'm just impulsive. I just have impulsive issues. I don't even know if I identify as being an extrovert, especially the more that I learn about ADHD and especially the more that I find what fills my cup and what drains my cup. And that's part of my key to success. That's what keeps me on target. Next page. So why does ADHD happen? The biggest things, and you can see my slides are like very bare because I want people to pay attention. As a learning development professional, we got to keep it simple. Genetics, so 90% is going to come from your family. Again, I also said I'm going to have to tell my parents they have ADHD. So my niece, same thing. 90% genetic, and then the 10% is going to be a genetic makeup from incident that's going to happen. So maybe like a brain injury or a stroke that is going to can cause an onset. Second reason ADHD occurs is because of the biology. So you're looking at the frontal lobe here. So specifically the prefrontal cortex, especially the right side. It doesn't develop as fast in those who have ADHD. It also has decreased receptors, which when we're thinking about electrical circuits for these lights, same thing in our brain, and we need those receptors to be strong to get the connections from each part of our brain. And then the decreased circuit. So again, the whole circuit board making things work. Go ahead and tap right here in the prefrontal cortex for me. There we go. Yeah, so we're looking at the prefrontal cortex is going to be responsible for those complex cognitive behaviors, personality expression, social norms, those kind of things. Next slide. And then the third reason or contributing factor to ADHD is going to be the chemistry makeup of the brain, specifically dopamine. Dopamine is the powerhouse for an ADHDer. Dopamine affects your sleep. It affects how you experience pleasure. It affects controlling your attention, processing information, and motor imbalance. So ironically, now this is probably just me knowing this information, but you saw me trying to work my mouse. I was going to do both. And the whole time I was thinking, like, how motorically am I going to do both, right? Like, so two things going on there. My attention was not on what it should have been. And then I'm like, I don't know if I can handle that. Even being a competitive athlete, it's a lot on the motor aspect of my body to do two things at once. That. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So I can explain those things, genetics, biology, and the chemistry makeup of our brain. But to really, really hit ADHD on the head here and bring you into what it's like for my brain and maybe some of yours, your partner says to you, hey, I really want to eat this takeout. I need some ketchup. Can you go get me some ketchup? Go ahead and hit the dog bed for me. So you walk into the kitchen and you start bouncing around as you do, and you're like, crap, what did I walk in here for? Even though it was 2 seconds ago. Now I know some people that don't identify with ADHD might be thinking, yeah, that happens all the time. But let's take it a step further. Go ahead and touch like around the kettle over by the door. Yeah. Then you make your way around the table and you're going to the fridge because you remembered. And then you start thinking, I really need to rearrange my slides for tomorrow. I think the dopamine slide needs to go before the genetic slide. I think that I definitely need to Slack my coworker and tell her I didn't send her that email yet. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Oh, and then you remember the ketchup. So you go around and you pass the stove, now's a perfect time to start the soup that you want to make for tomorrow. It's a perfect time. So you start that stovetop, and you make sure that you are ready to go for that stove. And finally, you get to the fridge, and you say, hey, babe, did you want yellow mustard or honey mustard? And babe says, ketchup. I wanted ketchup. And also, it's been 12 minutes. What have you been doing? I've finished my fries. And this is an everyday occurrence. God bless my partner, right? This happens all the time. But it is so much more than just like forgetting something or getting sidetracked. It's the impulsive control that soup, on an 80-degree day needs to be started now. And it's getting to the fridge, that final task, and knowing you were looking for something, but not knowing exactly what it was. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So now you're probably like, wow, how did she get through a day? Tons of support. First of all, you can always support yourself through medication. I am unmedicated, but there has been a huge boom in medication. You're looking at figures rising, 36%. And in women, up to 85%. And this is directly from the people who are releasing the scripts. Now we know that there's also issues with things like Adderall, right? Like abuse and overprescribing. So that might contribute to this. But there's other ways to medicate. Some people look at psilocybin and mushroom use. Some people look at over-the-counter stuff like nootropics. I'm not here to direct that, and I have no comments on medication. That's not my realm, but it is one way that people can support their ADHD. The next one is movement. More movement equals more dopamine. I could sit here and be really stiff. My brain doesn't want to do that. I need to move, which is why I compete. Competing keeps me at the gym every day, keeps me active, and it keeps my dopamine levels high. I seek it, and I receive it, and then I feel good. And then finally, behavior management. The really cool thing about behavior management, I know this. I'm a therapist, right? So I put behavior plans into place. But strategies have been proven to be successful, right? So you can support yourself with the compensatory strategies, and you can also make skill improvement. And the really nice thing about this is, I know going back to medication, sometimes I think like, 6 and 7-year-olds on Adderall, like, is that really good for their brain? There has been a study that was released this past year, 2022, saying that it's actually more of this, that because they get on the medicine earlier, their brain then learns the skill, so we can wean them off the medicine faster. So they don't have to go that lifelong struggle. We give them the tools to be successful early on, and then they can take that into middle school and high school and graduate school, and then be crazy enough to work a full-time job and own a business, right? So I think that's awesome. And like I said, I know this, right? But to see it in research definitely helps. More support for your ADHD. So 3 tips I'm totally going to give, whether you're neurodivergent or not. I think these are very successful. First is the 3 planner. So the 3 planner is something that I took over from actually one of my colleagues. And I think he wrote a book about a Navy SEAL or something that does this. This second-hand, third-hand information. It's Bible, I swear. 3 planners. So the first one is going to be your your major products. It's going to be your most important tasks for the day, and maybe a few additional, right? So priority. This is called your priority planner. If I have something due for a business partner at 4 o'clock, that's going on there. That's a priority. The second notebook, though, is going to be your daily planner. No, hover again. Try again. There you go. Is going to be your daily notebook. So that's going to be the breakdown of items from one. It's going to be any meetings that I have to go to, going to the gym, doing my laundry, whatever is on my daily to-do list, which is different than your big priority list, but it's hard to understand that when you have ADHD. And then finally, the third notebook is going to be your brain dump. Because what I was finding is that on my daily task, I had like 72 tasks, and then I'd be like, why can't I get anything done? Or, oh, I didn't get anything done today. I'm so mad at myself. So again, with that constant creative flow, impulse control, attention problems, you need a third notebook to dump everything, because it's going to set you up for more realistic expectations, and you're going to get your work done a lot faster if all of the really great but not super urgent ideas are in a different place. The second one, go back. Go back. You are doing fabulous. The second one is timers. Now, one thing I learned about timers, and this is a big tip, I think you could probably take, if you have children, you could take this, is setting the timer and placing the timer away from you. We live in a world where everybody has their phones like on their lap or at a grab away. Transitions are really tough. So again, when my partner says, hey, we're going to eat in 15 minutes. And I'm like, I just started this presentation. I got to get it done. But I know he likes to eat his food hot. Me, I could care less. I'm going to try to balance being a business owner and being a good partner. And I'm going to set a timer, but I'm going to put that timer in the hallway outside of my office, because if it goes off and I'm typing, I'm just gonna snooze it. It's like laying in bed, right? Like you're just gonna hit snooze 10 times. So I learned that my transitions are very, very tough, and I have a very hard time going from one task to another when it involves other people. If it's a Saturday and I'm working like all day by myself, I'll get lost forever, I don't care. But when it affects other people, you gotta use some help there. So timers are great, but not at your hand disposal there. It needs to be a walk away. Finally, the third thing that's been most successful for supporting my ADHD, at least, is batch working. So bulk work completion. I am the admin, social media manager, cleaner, bookkeeper of my business. And so social media, I will take a Saturday or a Sunday, and I'll do bulk posts, and I'll have them all planned out so it's ready to go. Because if I have to rely on posting it every day and remembering, not so much. I do batch work right now. We're releasing new software for the devices that I showed you earlier, and I'm doing insane amount of batch work for what the new software looks like. So I sit there and I just continue to create the same amount of things over and over again. But it works, and it's really helpful, and then I don't have to rely on myself or any of my lists to know if it's done. I've set aside that time, and I've gotten it done. I do the same thing with cleaning. I do the same thing with shopping. Those kind of things need to all be bulked together. Okay, and so at this point, you're probably thinking like, well, is there anything that makes you successful? There are tons of ADHD traits that make a lot of people successful. The first one is sensation seeking. So this is the idea of like, I'm gonna multitask, which does make you a decent business owner. I'm gonna have outside of the box thinking, creativity. Obviously very good for business owning, also good for being an employee. Another ADHD trait that's really important is you have deep, deep passions, and part of that is because of the low dopamine levels. You're seeking the dopamine, so when you find something that fulfills that dopamine, you're like, yes, and then it usually turns into an obsession. But for the sake of success, it's pretty good. Super fast acting. I had like 17 fires last week at my job, at my business, while I'm working my full-time job. But I know that there is advantages of my brain being the way it is, because I can act under high, unforeseen, stressful circumstances without any anxiety or paralysis, because I act really fast. So this is the positive spin, right? I put out fires, I can thrive in crisis. Pivoting. My landlord was selling his business, his building that I was in. Just finding out how we were going to keep my business alive while that was happening. We're just constantly pivoting. And finally, looking at exploratory behavior. Again, this makes you handle bigger changes, take bigger leaps, branch out to community collabs. I'd say that one thing that I probably do different from like other speech therapists in my company is my community collabs are all over the board. Like, I don't stick to just occupational therapists or physical therapists to rely on my referrals. I talk to doulas, I talk to newborn photographers, I talk to everybody and anybody I can. But I have this different lens of like, hey, who sees these kids first and how can I help them better? And that becomes a way of like exploring these different changes and taking these bigger leaps that going to school and seeing some of my mentors did not take because they were neurotypical. But it's not just those traits that make people successful. There has been ties to ADHD and being an entrepreneur, and some of the research that support is the high energy and creativity, the ability to take risks, making decisions in uncertain environments. And of course, this cracks me up. Go ahead and press the info. This was a longer list, but every list I looked at was white males of successful people with ADHD. In business, I had to look very deep in the weeds to find 2 famous people, not business owners, that have ADHD. But again, I wanted to put this in here because I do think it shows that gender equality issue again. Mm-hmm. All right, so having the traits to be an entrepreneur and then diving into entrepreneurship is different than success, right? I tried to stay away from the research that looked at how many businesses with ADHD fail because of those risky behaviors, because of the inability to control your impulses. But there was way more for success than there was for failure. So you have your traits, you've identified them, you're an entrepreneur, you want to do this. Here are 5 things that I think lead to success. Slide. Don't force neurotypical. You're not. Don't be it. I had a really hard time when I first started my business because nothing fit like my bill. Like nothing was calling to me in the way the suggestions, and I had my first business mentor. I'm like, I don't think this is right for me. And it's because it wasn't. Her brain was neurotypical and my brain was not. So some of those things might look like repeatable routines. You must get up at 6:30 every morning, then you must work out, and then you must start work by 8:30. If you don't have your 3-work notebook done by 8:35, then you're not successful. No, none of that. You can start work at 10 a.m. and still be successful with ADHD. You do not need repeatable routines. You need persistence, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Small habits. Go ahead and hover over small habits because I want to make sure. Yeah. So this one. You need to make your bed every morning. The way you do one thing is the way you do the others. No, not with ADHD. ADHDers are really good at creativity and problem solving, and I'm really good at making my patients feel heard and understand. But I don't make my bed every day, and so it doesn't drive my success. And so I think it's important to know that the small habits are very hard, and they don't need to be done in order to have success as an entrepreneur. Number 3, community connections. My first business mentor was like, you gotta go to this event, you gotta go to that event, and I'm like, I'm tired, really tired. I'm not gonna, there's an event tonight. I'm not gonna go. You cannot make me go to those things. And not because I don't like people, because I don't love Isabella's. It depletes me. It's going to put me in a hole that's going to leave me unable to complete my work the next day. I'm not gonna show up the best for my patients. I'm not gonna show up the best for my boss or my partner or myself if I attend one of these events. So my hack is seeing who goes to those events, commenting, connecting with them on LinkedIn, connecting with them on Facebook, and then having a one-on-one Zoom meeting with them. That's how I make my community connections. I usually circle around the block 800 times before I could go to one of these because they're so draining. Once I'm there, I have a blast, but I couldn't figure out why, and I still don't really know, because I have fun in the moment. But to take me out and do that is not something that I find successful. And you'll find 5 business mentors that will tell you you have to go and do that to be successful. Tip number 2 is to make room for inconsistency. Your brain's not normal, and it's not going to be. You have to embrace the ebb and flow. There's going to be days where you are going to do that batch work, and there's going to be days where you might not do anything. And those ebbs and flows are part of it. And I think the most important thing here is to replace the idea of consistency with persistence. So if you think about persistence, you're going to mess up. You're going to mess up. You'd mess up if you were a typical business owner, but you're going to mess up being a neuroatypical business owner too. So send the email even though it's past the deadline. Like, send it. That's persistence. That's going to tell your brain, like, oh, I can do this, and next time I might even do it better next time. Start the proposal even though you wanted to have it done 2 days ago. A lot of times what I do, because I'm so busy, is I put these like arbitrary deadlines on, like this presentation. I took PTO to be here because owning my own business and working full time. And so I wanted this done on Monday. I got this done last night at 10 p.m. Like, there's just no point putting arbitrary deadlines. Start it whenever you can, however you can. Things like showing up on social media. Obviously, if you work in social media or you're a social media marketer, don't follow my advice. But if you're an average Joe business owner, you're going to hear people tell you need to post every day, or you need to do this every day. Just be persistent. Doesn't have to be consistent every day, because that can be draining to you. And then if that's draining, your dopamine levels go low, and that's going to affect the rest of your work. All right, now tip number 3 is to drop perfectionism. And ironically, a lot of people that have ADHD don't identify with the idea of like a perfectionist, but they do identify with the opposite fear, which is rejection. If it's not perfect, it's rejected. And so front-end perfection is I cannot work until the laundry is done. I cannot start my project until the dishes are done. I have to work out first. On my drive here, I was like, am I going to be able to present? My truck is really messy. And I'm like, what? Like, yes, of course I'm going to be able to present. Front-end perfectionism can ruin your progress and your success, so abolish that. Back-end perfectionism is overcorrection and editing. Now, I think this has a little wiggle room because obviously as a professional, you have to show up as a professional. If I showed up with like a ton of spelling mistakes or my images all over the page, to me that affects learning, and that's unprofessional to me. However, when I submit things to my boss or to my business partner, there's going to be spelling mistakes here and there, and I just have to be okay with that. You're human, and the neurotypical brain is also human, and they still make mistakes. So back-end perfectionism is something you got to get rid of too. Number 4 is getting help. So this looks like a bunch of ways in business ownership. The first way is body doubling. So my partner doesn't own a business, doesn't compete in strength sports, doesn't have ADHD. So I use him as a body double all the time. And what that means is he can sit very still and get some of his work done. So I sit next to him and I pretend that I'm him. I use him as an anchor. I am not him. I'm never going to be. He is way too calm for me. But his energy and his discipline and the way he shows up in the variety of his, parts of his life allow me to body double. Admins, get some help. Get creative with this. If you're starting out and you don't have the funds for an admin or a virtual assistant, I understand, but you can get creative. My last admin was a Marywood University graduate student because they're looking for internships. We're lucky here in the Wilkes-Barre area. We have a ton of great universities and colleges and a ton of people that are looking for experience in all different types of things. So call upon that. Trade services with somebody. Hey, I do that all the time with my sister. I'm like, I'll look at your paper if you do my bookkeeping. My sister just graduated with her PhD. She is officially Dr. Long, and her dissertation was on ADHD as well. Swap money for things you can do. So if you're putting your money in some place that you have a strength, take that money and put it to an admin or put it to a place where you don't have a strength. Vulnerability with key stakeholders. I'm not saying you need to tell everybody you have ADHD or that you're neuroatypical. I'm not saying that, but having honest conversations go a long way. This is my beautiful business partner, Mary Vanesco. She owns a company called Well Nurtured Development, and it's occupational therapy. We're in the same building, and I just have started having very honest conversations when I'm in my lows of my ADHD. My dopamine is low, and she's chomping at the bit for her 5th project of the week because she is also Neuro-Spicy. I had to tell her, like, pump the brakes. Like, I can't handle this right now. And she knows that it doesn't mean I'm not interested. It doesn't mean I'm not willing to help her. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to show up for her. It just means, like, right now I can't handle it. And having those honest conversations have gone a long way. And they're hard to have. I just started having them with my boss at my full-time job, and it's made for a better work relationship, but it has taken me a long time to get there. And finally, outsource the information. So I have this running joke where I say, I went to Catholic school, so I'm like, I didn't learn math, I was too busy praying. Turns out, majority of people, well, a lot of people with ADHD have dyscalculia. So this is, everywhere from switching numbers around to having just difficulty like counting. Like I notice when I'm doing my sets working out, I struggle when it's like set of 15 because I'm like, what rep am I on? And so those things obviously affect business ownership, right? Simple addition, keeping your books. We have problems judging our capabilities, so time and deadlines, and prioritize getting rid of the things you don't need to handle. And again, I urge you to get creative on what that looks like. Like barter with my sister all the time to get the help I need. I have such a good pool of resources between Misericordia University and Marywood University that again, there's interns that want to help with some of these things that I totally trust to do some of these things. And I trust them more than I trust myself. And that's what it comes down to, getting help. And finally, the 5th is you have to have fun. You can tell that I didn't use a PowerPoint presentation because, like I said, if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it. And this is more than just like, okay, Chelsea, grow up. It really does affect your dopamine level. So owning a business, it has to be fun. That means maybe your social media posts have to be fun. That means selecting events like this that I thought were going to be really fun, like totally knew they were going to have these awesome beanbag chairs. So I was like, I want to be there. And so you have to think about those things to drive your success. We have a really fun space. We're providing speech therapy, occupational therapy, breastfeeding support. We do voice therapy, gender affirmation voice therapy. And I try to make our space as fun as possible because if not, I'm not going to go up to it. Like I'm just not going to walk in the door. And I just am at a place in my life where if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. And there's ways that you can make the mundane fun, whether that's like really good music while you do your payroll, which is my least favorite thing to do, or treating yourself. Like I'm going to do my payroll and then I'm going to walk down the street and get my $12 tea that I totally don't need, right? Those things, they help and they're going to keep you more successful because your brain is going to be like, wait, I have dopamine after doing that really hard task or that task that was mundane. Cool, I'm in, I can do this. So if you're thinking right now that success is 1 cup I can't sit still, 2 teaspoons of hyperfixation, 5 tablespoons of chaos craving, and 1/4 cup risky behavior. You're totally right. These are the things that can be turned positive for those who have ADHD or ADHD-like disorders, to make successful business owners, to make successful employees, to make successful entrepreneurs. It's totally possible, and taking these things that were once viewed as negative and turning them positive is the start of success. All right. Any questions for me? Yeah. So that's interesting that you asked. So when looking at this, like those exact things, like showing up for your 9 to 5, being at staff meeting at 12 p.m. with 50 people on a Zoom screen, those are the things that usually force ADHDers into entrepreneurship. So I think there is a word of caution there, right? But I think what it means, you have your non-negotiables, right? Like I go to the gym every day, that is routine. And you have to make money to sustain your living, so you have to get to work at 8 a.m. But everything else, you know, I think that you listen to any podcast and it's like, you must look at the sunlight from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. You can't use sunglasses from 12 to 3. This is my sister. This is all she talked about at Easter. You have to stretch when you go to bed. Those things are not the things that are going to make you successful. So I think it's about finding that line of like, what are your non-negotiables? Like I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm fortunate I work from home, so if I want to start at 9:05 instead of 8:05, I can do that. But I know not everybody can, and I think it's about finding that space of like, what can you waver and what it has to stay, stuck in the ground. Yeah.
My question is, if you're previously undiagnosed, especially as an adult, and you said women often get undiagnosed, well, I'm assuming that's the same for a lot of people of color in their communities, how do you approach figuring out if you feel like you do have ADHD?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I found out because of friends. Like, again, everybody knew I was going through some big life changes. But I started realizing that it wasn't this big life change that was causing these signs and symptoms. They had been there all along. And so I started talking to other people and being like, hey, do you think this is normal? I swear to God, like this is what I started doing. I'm like, hey, what about this? And they're like, no. And then I found some people that were like, yeah, I do the exact same thing. And I'm like, you're on Adderall, aren't you? And it just became this like really open conversation about what's going on. And originally I chose to do an online service with a psychologist to look at all my symptoms. I took a test, those kind of things. Luckily, we're in this day and age of there is education everywhere. You can go on, I assume TikTok. I don't have TikTok. You can go on Instagram and type in ADHD and you can find tons of accounts that will help at least raise some red flags. I don't think using those as a gold standard is ideal, right? But finding out if you align with maybe some of those characteristics, or do you identify with some of those posts that they're posting, and then finding the medical professional to help. I think that that's where it starts. But because it's so undiagnosed and it's still so prevalent, having those conversations with your peers and your colleagues, there's usually D&I groups at your companies, and ours at my company just started doing table talks, and I found out like 10 of my colleagues had ADHD at the last one. And obviously that's it only if you have the safe space to do that, but I think starting those conversations with like your peers and moving into some of the free education to navigate to a medical professional can help.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I just first want to say thank you for doing this session because also as a person who was not diagnosed until my mid-30s, a lot of what you're saying really makes sense. So number one, thank you for doing that. Second, I do think as a child, I resonated with what you were saying about your kind of coping, or I forget the word you used, but different ways, right? So medication, movement, behavior, and I was in competitive gymnastics when I was younger, right? So I think that did a lot for me in good ways. But now as an adult, I really struggle with that, the ability to like get the movement. And I am a proponent of medication, like I'm on it, but I also really miss that, and I think that helped me as a child. Can you share or elaborate a little bit more about what you do that is non-medicated to really just make a difference in your everyday?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess you made a good point though. I played softball at Marywood. I played 3 sports growing up my whole life. I guess that probably was some of my medication, right? That movement medication. And then I sustained it with my competing now. And even though it's a hobby, I make sure that it stays in my life because I know it keeps my dopamine up. So then is it really a hobby? I'm not sure. It feels like a job sometimes. But as far as non-medication, I think some of the things that have helped me the most is the additional strategies, like having that routine down for like my notebooks and whatever. Like to me, that is my medication because I'm not medicated. Some of the other things that have helped is nootropics. And again, I recommend, working with a medical professional to help you with like what types of nootropics are going to be best. I could get into the specifics, but I won't because that's not my profession. But I think that can lead you to a better place. The other thing I noticed too with medication is over-the-counter like stimulants, like how my body responds to caffeine, how my body responds to not having caffeine, and finding like the perfect balance. Because again, that can also increase my dopamine, and so that has really helped. And just like knowing myself like that. I will also say, totally a podcast junkie. Meditation is great. That helps. There are things like that become your medication. But yeah, I definitely, if especially if you're thinking about, getting out of pharmaceutical prescriptions, nootropics is a good place to start, and at least having those conversations with your medical professionals. Yeah. Okay.
So I work for the YMCA. I know there are a lot of other organizations around here who basically our employee structure is a lot of entry-level employees, a lot of students, a lot of people who come in, and then a few directors. How would you recommend in a situation where you get a lot of students, where basically there are only a few directors, there are a lot of people coming in, a lot of entry-level staff, how would you recommend those directors work with people who are ADHD before they've been driven into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So just in your everyday leading, if it's a rotating door, I understand. I think it's about having those conversations with them. Like even in the interview, what do you need to show up your best at work? They might say to you, I need to come in at 9:15. 8:15, and maybe you have the resources to do that. Maybe you have someone who's going to be there at 8:15, right? So that's all good, and you can be flexible. I think the other thing is, especially young, you have to provide the structure because if you're too flexible, then, and this is also generational learning too, if you're talking about Gen Z, then you're talking about a different style of learning too. So providing them a little structure with those open conversations of like, hey, do you need to have your lunch in a different space? Do you want to go off campus? Most of us stay in here, but if you need to go do your thing, go do your thing. I also think one thing that has helped being in typical jobs is the ability to express myself in other ways. And I know that sounds a little silly, but if you have like a work uniform, sometimes that's like a dopamine killer. Like Catholic school my whole life, I never want to see another uniform as I create my capsule wardrobe. No, so I think those little things actually end up going a long way when you're thinking about college students and interns and younger employees. But then as they become more permanent staff, it's about those open conversations so that you can best support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. So we'll just take a few minutes, and then we'll be right back here in the main auditorium for a fireside chat.